Okay, can you hear me? Anyone? All right. Well, I see Steve Shives has just started a hangout too, so no, I'm not going to have anybody here. Spiderwebs, where? Where? So what are we talking about? Someone named Joe told me I should do this again, and it's been a while. So Nestle doesn't know. We could talk about arachnophobia. Is that some weird spider web shower curtain? Uh, no, it's a weird spider web tablecloth. It's just something different from my usual. Oh, here's a shoji screen. Let's just put that up there. So I threw up my spider web tablecloth. I've also got one with skulls on it, but I don't know. That's such a cliche on YouTube. You got to have your skulls everywhere. Oh, you had a conversation with King Crocoduck on EP, Evolutionary Psychology? Oh, we could talk about evolutionary psychology, but then I'll get bitter. Yeah. So evolutionary psychology is one of those things. It's just bad science. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just can't grasp why anyone with any knowledge of evolution would accept it anymore. Uh, it had to be established by psychologists who didn't know anything about the actual science. So yeah, my big gripe with evolutionary psychology is it is so dang adaptationist. That's the only thing they believe in is natural selection. And one of the things we hammer on to our students is that evolution has multiple mechanisms. You can't just say, well, if it happened, it was by natural selection. You have to recognize that there's alternative mechanisms out there. Do I know much about bioinformatics? And Mega Jetso really wants to do some biology computing work in the future. Um, I know a little bit, just a smidgen. Um, I have a background in computing and biology, but I haven't been keeping up with it for so many years that no, I'm not the best person to talk about it. I do know though that bioinformatics is a hot field right now. And it's going to be hot for a good long while because, yeah, we got all these new tools to sequence things, and the data is just sitting there, and we're waiting for people to figure out how to interpret it. So that's going to require computer skills. At my university, that is Morris, see, uh, we've just recently gotten off our butts and we're starting to put together a data science minor. So big data and all that kind of stuff, statistics, bioinformatics, these things all fit together beautifully. And I think they're going to be of increasing importance in biology in the future. When you got a flood of data, you need something to figure it out. And that's what computers are good for. So sure, yeah, you should do some biology computing work. It's a good thing to get into. Let's see, this is a Okay, if scientific facts not equal to social constructions, oh, King Croc is so disappointing. Yeah, evolutionary psychology, I wouldn't equate it with determinism, but I would equate it with um, inadequate knowledge of the science of biology. Yeah, social constructionist preferences. You know, this also bugs me because if you study evolutionary biology at all nowadays, you will run into constructionist theories everywhere because constructionism has become a big component of evolutionary biology. So they should. Yeah, I'm thinking like the evolutionary biology textbook I used has long sections on constructionist theories, and they're really useful for understanding what's going on in the natural history of populations. So it's uh, this opposition to construction. It's just ignorance. I'm sorry. Let's see. Just a side note here. Could you please give a German who only recently stumbled over Christopher Hitchens a quick advice if he's worth checking out? So far, I'm a bit put off by his views on the war in Iraq. Yes, I was strongly put off by his views on the war and on terrorism and on Muslims. And there's a really ugly side to him. Hitchens, though, was a brilliant writer. That's the thing. That's what kills me. Is he's got this great talent for polemics, and you got to, just as somebody who disagrees with him, you got to stand back and admire his skill in putting these stories together. Yet at the same time, I don't think history is going to be kind to him. Uh, I think he was on the wrong end of history, and that's going to increasingly marginalize a great talent. It's too bad. Okay, back to evolutionary psychology. Stephen Jay Gould called out EP. Yeah, and King Crocodile dismissed that by stating Gould had a habit of letting his politics take over on such matters. That pisses me off, okay? That's whenever somebody promotes, diverse views, different ideas, they're using politics. But when some asshole promotes the status quo, when they're sitting there being very conservative, that's not politics, right? That's there's this magical transformation where something that is, a matter of conformity to a conservative majority suddenly gets whitewashed. It is no longer politics, and it's not true. The opposition to Gould was also equally, even in some ways, even more political than Gould was. So no, I don't buy that at all. See, the just so stories of criticisms of EP doesn't hold up when you recall that all evolutionary explanations begin as just so stories, and the difference is they're actually put to the test. Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I disagree. So evolutionary hypotheses, you could characterize those as sort of just so stories, that you suggest a possible explanation. But generally, what you do when you're proposing an explanation is you are drawing on a battery of known likely mechanisms. So you've got a phenomenon you want to explain. And what you do is you draw on evolutionary theory and you say, okay, could it be selection? Could it be drift? What kinds of mechanisms are at play in this particular scenario? And then you propose one of those. And you also, if you're doing it right, you counterbalance it with a null hypothesis. The problem with EP is, no, they don't give good explanations. They've only got one explanation out of the battery of possible explanations that they'll pull out, and that's selection, 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 selection every time. And they don't care about a null hypothesis, because what they're working towards is an explanation that fits their preconceptions, which is kind of the opposite of science. Furthermore, the differences, he says, the differences are actually put to the test. No, evolutionary psychology does not put anything to the test. They do really bad tests. You know, so much of evolutionary psychology is a wild hypothesis about what happened on the African savanna 100,000 years ago. And then to test it, what do? They do some silly ass choice test for undergraduates at a Western college. Nope, sorry, that's not valid. Just doesn't work. Okay. Don't piss off PC. He will send a gang of spiders after you. No, because I like my spiders, and I'm not gonna risk them with anyone. Okay, other questions. I find all the potential research really exciting. Also, what if academia is just really boring? I would hate it if doing a PhD just wasn't for me. Oh, that's a good point. Here's the thing. I don't think academia is boring. It's not boring at all. You are given an opportunity to pursue a story that you are interested in. What's boring is the politics and the prospects that surround academia. That it's, you know, we saw this all the time in graduate school. We could actually watch it happen to grad students as they would proceed through it. They would be at this point at the beginning where they're really enthused and excited about this project they're going to do, and they're starting to get data and they're starting to work through it. And then what happens is we hit them with a bunch of requirements. Oh, you got to write a thesis. Oh, you got to present this at a conference. And that's when the strain starts to build up and students start to get more and more cynical and more fed up with academia. You know, in my perfect world, we would just hand every prospective scientist $100,000 and tell them, go do something. Go do something interesting with this. And if they can't justify it in a couple of years, then we say, okay, well, you're clearly not a scientist. Go find something else to do. Okay, back to EP. Yeah, V.S. Ramachandran's a really smart guy. I like him a lot. And yeah, he kind of shot down EP too. So let's see. Another, is all evolutionary psychology equally bad? It's a matter of definition. You know, there are some really good anthropologists and biologists who are doing legitimate work on, for instance, African cultures and baboon societies, who are getting outside of their little American university and their crop of undergraduates who need extra credit, taking really artificial sorts of things to test EP. I put test in quotation marks. So, for instance, Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy is really good. I really like her work. Is she evolutionary psychology? She could sort of fit into it because she's discussing these similar sorts of things. But I don't think she falls for the dogma of evolutionary psychology, which is one of the reasons she's good. So, you know, if you define Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy as evolutionary psychology, I'll say, okay, there's some of it that's really good. Yeah, so you could probably find individuals who are doing great work, but in general, I think it's just a suck hole, and people should stay away from it. I have never been more terrified in my life than when I presented a paper at a conference, says Darren Simmons. That scared me more than my dissertation defense. Oh yeah, no, I still have vivid memories of my first presentation. It was at the Western NerveNet meetings. It was at the University of Washington, which was where I was going to school, so it was right there. And I just remember the hours before my actual scheduled talk, I was just pacing in the stairwell of the building, going over and over this talk I was trying to give. And I don't actually remember the talk. It's just, that's often the case with me. It's more the stress beforehand that makes me worry. Okay, let's see. Academics are best at having a conversation. Well, some academics, present company accepted. But anyway, yeah, they are good people to invite to a formal social event, or an informal one. Here at Morris, we generally have we have this weekly thing, semi-weekly. It's been kind of irregular lately, where we just have a get together, a potluck with a bunch of people from all over the university. So we bring together English professors and art professors and biology professors and math professors, and they really are pretty good at. You get some interesting conversations there. I can't say that I'm the best conversationalist, but it's fun. Okay, how does a doctorate defense go? Do you already know or expect all of the questions? No, you don't know any of the questions. You don't have any expectations of questions. Yeah, that's part of the challenge. Just think of general public speaking. That's what you're doing, getting up there and you're giving a discussion of something that you are intimately familiar with, that you know really well, that you've practiced. And there will always be some jerk who comes up with a question that you can't answer. Or if you get lucky, they ask a difficult question and you get to dazzle everyone with knowing everything there was to know about it. The doctoral defense is actually not that bad. It's a doctoral defense. By the time you're doing your defense, you're pretty much expected to graduate. Your advisor will not let you go up and do a defense if you are unprepared. So it's like, yeah, I've done this wall of work and now I'm just going to get up there and say it and walk away with my degree. So yeah, the defense is not that bad. There's usually in your second or third year, there's usually this preliminary exam that's done, and that's tough. That's the demanding part. That one nearly broke me. It was this thing where you sort of specify, here's a general topic, and here's what I'm going to do research on. Here's what I'm going to dig into. So, for instance, my preliminary exam, I proposed to discuss cellular cytoskeletons. So it's a broad topic, lots of stuff to learn, but you know that you should fall within that narrow domain when you get into the room with these professors. But even there, yeah. So, for instance, when I went in for my preliminary exam, I was all chock full to the gills with information about microtubules and microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and dynamic interactions between proteins in the developing cytoskeleton. And this one jerk of a professor, his first question was, okay, explain to me how circadian oscillators work, which I didn't know. Yeah, but then it's another thing where you can just say, I don't know. That's not my interest. I don't follow that. And they'll usually let you sail, especially if you do it with confidence. So, yeah, you'll survive. Okay, we got another thing here. King Crocoduck doesn't like feminism. Okay. It's just what can you say about something like that? I mean, he doesn't like racial equality either, I bet then, right? It's just an indicator that he's got a whole bunch of real deep problems and a lot of dogmatic thinking going on. So, okay. Yeah, I won't count him among my friends. Let's see, David Cowdery is doing his PhD in computer science, looking at how VR can help people living with dementia. Okay, that sounds useful. That sounds fun. Give me a few years, maybe I'll need it. Yes, this hat is a Morris pom pom hat. They were selling them to raise money for the athletic department here. I'm also wearing I'm also wearing my Morris scarf. I am very raw today, I guess. I don't pay much attention to the sports going on here, but this is a small liberal arts college, and a lot of our students are involved in sports. And it's it's what we want to support is students who have a breadth of interests, who like sports, who like music, who like art, who like science, all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's a valuable part of the university. It's also something where we're not spending millions of dollars on it. Yeah. Okay, Mega Jetso, you're not detracting from the King Croc guy. The King Croc guy is detracting from the King Croc guy. Um, you're just hyped to be a doctor. As usual for postdocs, for postgrads to change their institute for a second degree. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't think. I mean, I suppose you could do that. You're talking about a second degree, from master's to a PhD. Hmm. Most of the programs I'm familiar with do not, they regard it as a continuum. So, for example, I do not have a master's degree because my university felt like you work towards a PhD, and a master's degree is a sidetrack. So don't bother with that. They only gave out master's degrees if you failed at your preliminary exams. It was kind of a consolation prize because you're leaving the university. You're not getting a PhD, but we'll give you a master's for the work you've done so far. On the other hand, other schools do have specific course requirements that get you a master's, but they're usually as part of the whole program. So my wife, for instance, has a master's degree from psychology, not as a consolation prize because she actually earned it, but it was part of the deal of proceeding towards the PhD degree. That it's a landmark along the way. Let's see. Do you think there's a limit to application of social constructionism as it could be self-refuting if overdone? I I don't know. It's a weird question. Uh, could it be overdone? Yeah. If you think social constructionism is everything, then yeah, you're overdoing it. There's all the other mechanisms behind evolution that are also part of the process. So the whole thing has to be there. There really are genes. Like in my arachnophobia video, I tried to make it clear that yeah, there's clearly a genetic component to this. It's just not the simplistic, direct component that people think, and it's also a component that's strongly modulated by the environment. So yeah, let's see. How do you distinguish between people who are black women and people who are not black women? Is it some? Oh, King Crocodile, just fuck off. Now this is a common strategy. Is you define a set of categories, and you say, okay, well, you've got to have this box and this box and this box. How do you fill those boxes? And aren't you setting up walls? Aren't you setting up barriers between different groups? And no, because if you take this kind of intersectional stuff to its logical conclusion, everybody's unique. Everybody's got their own individual set of issues and privileges and problems. And so King Crocodile asks, what will you do if someone like me, a person with light skin and a penis, claims to be a black woman by virtue of possessing those lived experiences? Why would you do that? I mean, it's this totally artificial nonsense that they keep bringing up, that this is not a concern. When someone makes the extreme effort of trying to find something that fits them, then what you got to do is, what they're going to have to do is make some serious effort. It's not just simply, I'm going to casually announce that I am a black woman and therefore I get these benefits automatically. Being a black woman is hard. Show me that you're actually experiencing some of the difficulties of that situation. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, how do you ID spiders as Parasteatota tepidoriorum instead of other Theridiidae? Are there only a few from that family in Minnesota? There's actually several from that family in Minnesota. And that's why I was uncertain about the specific species for a good long while, is I needed more details. So how I identified the ones I've got as Parasteatota is I used a key and just worked my way through the key. And, there was some confusion at first, whether it could be, let's see, what was it? Steatota triangulosa is pretty common around here, apparently, but I didn't get any Steatota triangulosa. What I found is that these were all Parasteatota. So one of the things I want to do this coming summer is, when I've got a student or two working for me, is I want to do a little spider survey of the neighborhood. So I want to hit up different houses around the Morris area, people who volunteer. I'll ask people to volunteer to let us survey their garage or something, and figure out if there is much diversity. Parasteatota apparently is kind of taken over everywhere. So it's not surprising that that's the one I mainly find. Let's see, can one find these spider keys somewhere? No, and I'm kind of annoyed about that. It seems like the kind of thing that ought, and maybe somebody will tell me I'm wrong and you'll be able to find it, but no, I wasn't able to find a clean, simple, straightforward spider key online. I was finally able to find it in that book, Spiders of North America, and that's what I used to do that. There's a couple of other books out there. I'm hoping to purchase some. There's a little leather-bound books that you can carry around, because I don't have the key memorized, so I want to check out some other spiders. So yeah, that's just buy one of these books if you're serious about it. Did these spiders come in from a caravan? No, not exactly. They came over on a boat. So these are European spiders. So they are literally an invasive species in a sense, but they're invasive because we invaded first and brought them along with us. So they have a kind of relationship with humans. They live in human constructions. That's where they thrive. I imagine there have to be wild populations somewhere, but no, all the ones here in North America came in from Europe on boats with Europeans. Rick O'Brien says, I'm sure some of them are nice spiders and some of them are rapist. No, they're not. They're not. So yeah, they're all part of an invasive group that came along. It's like, it's like pubic lice. Are pubic lice an invasive species? Sort of. Oh, let's see. Chris Westman says there's a bridge in St. Cloud that is covered in spiders by the university. I go to St. Cloud every once in a while. I should check that out. Yeah, I will have to. I've been to there's a park here in Morris nearby that we checked out for a while, and there's huge numbers of like wolf spiders and jumping spiders there. I looked at some of the outbuildings, and they are just covered in cobwebs and webs. So they're everywhere. Once you start seeing them, you can't escape them. They're all over everywhere around you. So sure, I wouldn't mind checking out the one in St. Cloud. Another question: are you still using your sabbatical work on an Evo Devo book, or have the spiders taken over your priorities? The spiders have definitely been a distraction. I just found that once I started getting them set up, I thought, oh, this will just be something I do part-time. Once a week I'll go in and take them. It takes a little bit more time to do that. So it's been a distraction, but the book is still proceeding. I still hope to finish it before the end of my sabbatical. Is this a bad time for me? So this is from Wonder Lady. Is this a bad time for me to moan about climate change, my concern for critters, pests, and irresponsible leaders who cannot handle inevitable migrations? It's always a good time to moan about that. So moan away. Let's see. Are there any myths or misconceptions about spiders in the minds of the public? Of course there is. That's kind of what the arachnophobia video is about, is that a lot of people have this idea that they're deadly, terrible, horrible creatures. No, not so much. They are kind of vermin, right? They clutter up your house. They make things unclean. Nobody likes spider webs, cobwebs hanging all over in the corners. So if you're a neatnik, no, you're not going to like them, and that's reasonable. But otherwise, they're not particularly deadly. As I mentioned, when I went looking for the death statistics, they're really rare. Spider bites just don't kill you. They can, and in fact, the biggest risk of spider bite is, for instance, black widows and also Parasteatota secrete a necrotic toxin, so that actually causes breakdown of cells and tissue at the site of the bite. It can lead to inflammation, swelling, and that creates prime opportunities for infection. So that's the main thing you got to worry about with a spider bite, is getting an infection. Let's see. If only we could train spiders to do the dishes. Sure. Yeah. No, they're not. That's what the spider robots are for. Okay. Nestle would actually like spiders in his bedroom, since they eat things like mosquitoes. And the thing is, they don't quite do the same thing as a mosquito net, right? Because they got localized patches where they catch some of the invaders. And here in mosquito country of Minnesota, when things get bad, it's a cloud, and no, we didn't need an awful lot of spiders to clean them up. Okay, what else do people have to say? We've covered a fair bit of ground here, right? Let's see. What have I missed? We could always grade more about evolutionary psychology, which is a nonsensical field, but yeah, I think I railed against that enough. Oh, there's that area around your nose where you're very vulnerable to venom. Yeah, there's uh, things like the cribriform plate back here, and yeah, there are various places, and somewhere around here, there's a whole bunch of places where there's venous drainage that comes awfully close to the brain, which makes it a little riskier to get a bite there. Okay. Are you familiar with Gregory Bateson? Not real familiar, so I won't think about him. Let's see. Oh, Richard Wolff challenged Peterson's bluff that no socialist would debate him a month ago, and he's never responded. Right. Yeah, that's the thing is, Peterson's views of socialism are so ludicrous. They're just nuts. You know, I included that little excerpt from him where he's talking about how leftists believe in the infinite malleability of humans, and you can change to be, and it's just garbage. No, nobody believes that. Uh, yeah. Okay, in Australia, redbacks can kill you within hours, says David Cowdery. Are you sure about that? Because I just dug around trying to find anything on Australian redbacks, because if anything, I was sure that an animal from Australia was going to be lethal. And I'm just not finding much at all about them. I found that one newspaper article that said it was the first death from a redback bite in 37 years. So it's kind of overstated. Again, like Wonderly says, you're worried about the increase of disease. Yeah, that's the thing to worry about, is disease and infection. Spiders are so small that the venom is not the worry. The venom is something that can cause pain and can cause really nasty bites, but it's usually in such small quantities it's not going to kill you. I imagine there could be exceptions. The main thing to worry about is breaking the skin. Breaking the skin by an animal that is exposed to all kinds of different arthropods. Okay, let's see what else we got here. A new polio-type disease that causes paralysis in kids. I don't know anything about that. I haven't heard anything about that. Anyone know about it? Go ahead, chime in. What were your thoughts when you heard that vertebrate populations have declined 60% since 1970? Totally unsurprised. Yeah, we're doing a real number on the planet right now. We're just yeah. I'm not an ecologist, but I've been trying to get involved in doing some training on that stuff because I'm really interested in eco-devo. So mainly I'm kind of cynical and jaded. Yeah, we're killing everything. Oh, Corey Morrison just finished a paper on Ascaris. Okay, yeah, they're cool. There isn't a heck of a lot about them because this is another common thing, is when you've got a readily available model system, that becomes where most of the work is being done. So yeah, Caenorhabditis elegans has taken over all of the nematode research because it's kind of cool to be able to do all this comparative work. compare with other labs that are doing the same thing. But yeah. Oh, someone asked about spandrels. Is it a fact that the venom of the Sydney funnel web spider is dangerous to primates? A spandrel, since there are no primates in Australia. Oh, no, I wouldn't. No, because it's just doing what it's supposed to do, right? So as I mentioned, these are typically necrotic toxins. They just rupture cells and bust them apart. So the fact that you've got a generic toxin that affects a wide range of organisms, and a new organisms moves into its range and it's affected by it, I wouldn't call that a spandrel at all. A spandrel is going to be something that is basically an architectural side effect, that you're doing one thing, but it also has this other effect that isn't selected for. And yeah. Let's see. Geshton says there's a myth why men used to die from the Aussie redbacks because of outhouse. Yeah, that's another thing is, I mentioned that the statistics are really low right now. And one of the reasons death statistics from spiders are really low right now is public health. It's public health and hygiene saves more people than anti-venoms and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that we've had a change in how we manage our lives that minimizes the consequences and the likelihood of, being bitten by a redback or whatever is really important. It's a spandrel because of shared biochemistry. I still don't like the idea of calling that a spandrel. No, it's something that was selected for its toxic properties, for its ability to break down cells, to kill small animals, and the fact that it breaks down cells in a different organism doesn't make it a spandrel. Oh, wait, Nestle says it isn't dangerous to every vertebrate except for primates. Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I still wouldn't call it a spandrel. No, just a fortuitous or unfortuitous sort of biochemical side effect. I don't consider every possible side effect to be a spandrel. Specifically, what I look for in a spandrel is that it is a side effect that has no selective advantage to the organism until maybe some later change occurs. Yeah, and Hemi Scott says the effect on primates would be of no real benefit to spiders. Yeah, it doesn't help the spider at all. There's not going to be selection after this to make it more efficacious. And it's quite odd since there are no indigenous primates in Australia, so selection cannot explain that. And I agree, it's not, selection doesn't explain it, but it's going to be something, it's just going to be chance. It's going to be chance variation. Let's see, Fred Jones asks a practical question. Spiders are great, but what's the best way to keep them out of the house? Nope, there's no way. They're coming in. Except for the basic thing of, yeah, if you get out that feather duster and you clean all the cobwebs off your house, out of your house all the time, these poor little spiders will starve to death. They won't reproduce, and they'll diminish in numbers. They'll keep on invading, but they'll find that it's not a good place to live. Yeah, also I would think things like, if you leave out fruit in the kitchen, you get lots of fruit flies buzzing around. You are providing tasty food for invading spiders, so don't do that. Yeah, minimize their food source. That's another thing to do. Yeah, I mentioned that we're going to try and do this spider survey this summer. And what we'll be doing is we're going to specifically focus on checking out garages, not interiors of houses, because there's so much variation in how diligent people are in cleaning their houses and so forth. And for instance, we don't dust. I'm sorry. I hope you're not offended, but we don't dust very much. And yeah, it's other people will be much more meticulous, and so we don't want that piece of variation to throw us off. So we're thinking if we go to garages are just kind of an interesting environment because you're not as concerned with cleaning them. They have nooks and crannies, and nobody minds if you got a few cobwebs up in the corner of your garage. So we'll see. Okay, let's see. Another question. Do you think David Wilson's conception of group selection will be more and more the prominent view, replacing the neo-Darwinian modern synthesis view of evolution? No, I don't. The word that throws me off in that question is replacing. The neo-Darwinian synthesis is here to stay. It's a body of facts. It's a body of theory that explains a lot of phenomena. It's not going to disappear. There's maybe other situations where things like, well, I'm not a big fan of group selection. Group selection just goes up and down in popularity, and I just I'm not very impressed with it. But anyway, yeah, so it's not going to be replaced, but yeah, I could imagine there's going to be some new ideas that will enrich the field, and they'll come along. If you're interested in group selection, there's a really good book by a colleague at the Twin Cities campus named Mark Borello. Trying to remember what it's called. Anyway, if you just look up Borello, Borello, he's got a slim book that just talks about the history of the controversy of group selection, and it's a nice overview, really useful. Okay, did you hear that mangroves might be beneficial to reversing acidification of seawater? Yeah, sure. There's, mangroves have specific habitat requirements, and yeah, I could see them doing that, but they're not going to clean up the ocean. They're not oceanic. They're not pelagic mangroves. So let's see. I'm asked, how do you practically keep up with the literature in your field? You cannot give up. It's coming out at such pace. Do you have a separate time where you just read new publications? Yeah, once a week. I just try to sit down. And I've got a set of my favorite journals listed on my browser where I can go right to them. Let's see, what do I make it a point to read? Well, yeah, every week I read Nature and Science because you're required to. Public Library of Science, yeah, PNAS. I've also got here bioessays. Since Adam Wilkins left bioessays, it had less of a developmental biology emphasis, so I've been reading them less and less. But okay, sometimes you have some really good stuff. Development, of course. There's a journal called Developmental Dynamics, Developmental Genetics, Genes and Development, Mechanisms of Development, Developmental Biology, which is different from development. The journal is. I will occasionally browse the Journal of Experimental Zoology, and there's a online journal called EvoDevo. It's really good, and it's also open source, so I kind of recommend to everybody go browse EvoDevo regularly. So yeah, I got a little list of journals that I read pretty routinely. Let's see. How are arachnids related to each other? Yeah, what about eurypterids? I don't know. I've only just started getting. See, I've been a fish person all these years, and I've just recently started branching off and looking into the arachnids, and I'm not an expert on it, not yet. Give me a couple weeks. No, it'll take more than that. But yeah, just reading routinely about it, I sort of absorb these ideas. Do I think that modern medicine has stifled natural selection? No, nothing changes natural selection. Nothing changes evolution. You know, even suppressing the deleterious effects of some trait is an example of evolution. So no, it's not going to change anything. Oh, the goddamn Discovery Institute often pops up if you do a search for evolution. Yeah. They were really cunning and sneaking when they named their news site the Evolution News and Views, because they don't talk about evolution there at all. It's just garbage. Let's see. Academics might want to organize and do a sit-in in Congress to force mitigation of the climate crisis. What do I say to that? Well, yeah, right. Academics are not a unitary force. They're going to bicker and fight with each other the whole time, and getting them all to do one. A lot of academics are more concerned with lying low and not causing a ruckus than they are with forcing any kind of change. So no, I would not get my hopes up for that. Also, I don't see that they would have much pressure they could apply, because we've got a know-nothing Congress and an idiot for a president. So yeah, a bunch of us eggheads sitting in, they'll just say, okay, call out the cops. Let's see. So Nestle guy, no, you've been talking about evolution of vertebrate limbs, including fins, but I only find the serial homology hypothesis. Do you know a paper on an alternative hypothesis for fin evolution? Oh, well, let's see. I have it here. I thought I sent you a link to this one paper that took more of a, no, I don't have it here. It took more of a molecular look at how you would induce fins and limbs. That is, they're trying to map out the various interactions that go on. For instance, where FGF seems to act as something that interferes with other signals and generates a limb field. And I think that's actually the best approach to go to it. So you only find the serial homology hypothesis. Yeah, that's kind of all there is. But then the serial homology hypothesis is a good idea. That's the most likely approach that occurred in evolutionary history. Why would you reinvent whole new limb structures? You've got variations, but no, you might as well reuse the stuff you got. The academic community will be gathered soon after a solution to the cat herding problem is solved. Yeah, I'm just afraid that the solution will be like the Maoist solution. Yeah, let's herd all these academics off to farms where they can do productive work instead of thinking. Wonder Lady wants better politicians who respect science. Yes. Saw some small steps in that direction in the last election last week, but we've got a long ways to go. There were a lot of people who were, I actually put up a blog post about this, a lot of people bragging about all these people with science backgrounds getting into Congress in the last election. Generously, what you can say is you've got a bunch of people who've completed an undergraduate education that wasn't in law or economics. And I guess that's an improvement. Not to speak against law and economics. Those are useful fields, but they're not good for inducing scientific thinking in students. Okay, we didn't get the Senate. That's correct. So we can't. We'll get another shot in 2 years, but I hope he's just not going to get elected. See, Hemi Scott says, use what you got. Pharyngeal arches co-option upsets creationists. Creationists are easily upset because they don't understand anything. They're just bumbling about trying to make stuff up. It just doesn't work. That every time I go to a creationist talk, I'm just stunned at all the misconceptions they've got. I am asked, would you do a video about the different types and levels of selection, such as kin selection, group selection, gene level selection, and multi-level selection? Oh, that's a possibility. I could do that down the road. I actually have a little list, and I've got like 5 videos planned out. And at the rate I go, that's going to be a while before I finish all those. But yes, I will add that to my list. We'll see what happens. Wait, what? Seal Phantom Hive says, my mom and dad died in a fire. I saw their dead bodies. I missed them. Someone burnt down my house. That's horrible. I'm very sorry to hear about that. Okay. In 2 years, we can replace the Trump administration altogether if we demand reforms, lessening voter suppression, et cetera, and it's not going to be easy. Yeah, that one of the most promising things that snuck up on me in the last election was Michigan. Michigan, passed all these reforms to, things like automatic voter registration and so forth. And I think that's a brilliant way to go. Every state ought to do that. Because these are issues where there's widespread agreement. Okay, there's some weird stuff going on in the discussions. I'll just ignore that. But yeah, Michigan did it right. Just because of the changes they made, I kind of expect that they're going to do much better for us in the next election. So I'm all happy with that. Oh man. Clearly what I've got to do is get some moderators here, don't I? Okay. Clean that up. It's okay. Oh man, maybe I should do more. I have such power here. I didn't realize. I'm just looking at all these other. Oh yeah, that's a better one. Let's get rid of them all together. Okay, he's gone. Never mind. Okay. So we've been going at this about an hour. Has everyone had enough? Shall we move along? I'll get back to work. It's been fun. I'll try to do this a little more often, maybe. Okay, Lauren. Oh, one last thing. Lauren Petrick once researched multicellularity originated numerous times. Yeah, multicellularity is a really easy thing to evolve, apparently. So it's pretty common. You couldn't find any reference to it. Oh man. On Free Thought blogs, have you ever read Matthew Herron's blog, Fierce Roller? You should look. He studies Volvox. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that he knows about protists and multicellularity and colonial. Just check it out. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. It's been fun talking to you all. It's nice and warm in here. I should show you the outside. No, it doesn't look so nice and warm out there, but we will talk to you again later. It's been fun. Thanks. Okay.